Cradle, Dogs of Fount, Chapter 13. Nate had gotten away with rubbing her shoulder when they were at the bookstore, but when he grabbed her hand on the sidewalk after leaving the cafe, she snatched it away and gave him a cold look. If it weren't for the great weather, Nate would have felt a bit too stifled. He hadn't had sex in over 4 months, and it was making him creepy. Every time there was a strange woman around, he would have to catch himself before he went into a stare. He had dreams of being with women, but never closing the deal, and that added to his sense of frustration. Heather, well, who knows how recently she screwed, Nate thought. It would drive him mad if he didn't stop thinking about it. "You want to go to the radio store and get new headphones?" Heather asked. "We probably should, but isn't that like 3 blocks out the way?" Nate answered. "What's the rush?" "Don't you think we should start heading home?" Nate adjusted his glasses and Heather shot him a stern look. "Don't mess with them. I literally see like 3 cameras on this street." Nate straightened his black-rimmed glasses and left them alone. The glasses were a sort of jammer. The camera would try to scan the eyes, but the code in the lenses made them ignore the scan and move on to the next person with no red flags or alerts. Heather's glasses were tortoiseshells and more stylish, but she couldn't stop complaining about how much she hated them. "Sorry, I just had an itch," Nate said. "You said you needed some socks. There's a Jets on the way home." "Okay, yeah. I don't know where the heck my socks keep going." They stopped on the corner and waited for the walk signal and began to cross the street. Nate tried to grab Heather's hand again, and she slapped it away without looking or acknowledging Nate at all. "What's? Keep it up, or I'll leave your in Fount alone," she answered without turning around to look at Nate. They walked up the shrub-lined street of Halcyon rather quickly, as it was almost 9, and stores were already beginning to shutter. They went in Jets, and Nate followed Heather into the dim light of the women's section. They were the only 2 customers in the store, and a sales associate rolled her eyes as Nate and Heather walked by. Heather smirked, and Nate rolled his eyes and laughed quietly. They were about 6 miles from home and seated at the bus hub waiting for the westbound 77. "Look at the moon, Heather," she snorted. "Don't drink any warm water." "I know, right?" They laughed and sat in silence for a few moments. "You stopped me from giving up," Nate spoke plainly. "Come on, really?" "No chance, bro." "No, for real. I was living with Delilah and getting used to Philly and working in the military for Fount. I was confused. I didn't know what was right and wrong anymore, and even worse, I didn't care." Nate went to shift his glasses and stopped when Heather gave him a look. "Before I left Fount, I was drinking, just wasting my time. Nothing was important, not even my family. Then I met you, and I wanted to be a part of your life. You were so cool and so strong, and you had direction. I looked up to you in that way, and you're beautiful. It took forever to get to you. It's funny how you get to be so sweet when you're trying to get things your way. We were together for a good amount of time, and you barely speak to me some days. Now you barely can shut up for 5 minutes. I'm not stupid. You don't change. That guy you were before you left here, let me let you on to something. You're still him, whether you see it or not." "For Christ's sake, Heather, you know what? I don't feel like talking right now. Can you respect that, Nate?" The bus pulled from its parking spot about 10 minutes later, and the 2 went to the back of the bus after paying their 75 cents. Heather pulled out a book and started reading while Nate propped his feet on the seat and buried his face the best he could into his chest and dozed off. They got off the bus and both of them took a deep breath. Nate thought about trying to grab her hand again and then quickly wondered if he was truly stupid. The moon was still shining brightly and looked like one of the old-fashioned street lamps glass globe like the ones that were on their street. Nate took out his keys and opened the door for Heather. They walked through the fresh-smelling lobby into the elevator bay. No one was downstairs, which wasn't odd for half of the residents were seniors. On the elevator, Nate was thinking about that cigarette he was going to have once he made it inside. He didn't buy a new pack because their money was finite and couldn't rationalize smoke over food. He opened the door to their place and they both took off their shoes in the foyer. Heather nodded at Nate and went to their bedroom. Nate turned on the kitchen light and fetched a glass from the cabinet. He went to the freezer and put a few ice cubes in the glass from the baby blue ice tray. He put some water in the glass and took a few heavy sips. In the living room, he could hear the air whirring from the vents and decided to leave the radio off. He sat in the easy chair and with a sleight of hand switched the pack and stealthily put the first one in his pocket. He shook out a cigarette and lit it and took some very rewarding drags. By the time the cigarette was almost to the butt, his eyes appeared to become irresistibly heavy, and he fell over, apparently passed out on the floor. A few moments passed, and the whole apartment was silent but for the air conditioning. The general emerged from behind the curtains in the dining room, for those ones reached all the way to the floor. His silenced pistol was out, and one was in the chamber, and with the amount of toxin that the general put in the pack, the rebel could have possibly died from that alone. But he had to be sure. A double tap to the head was enough insurance. The general kneeled down close to Lint's body and pressed the barrel to his head, and just as he did that, he felt one pressed to his. "You do it, you die slow, you hear?" It was Heather. "Dear child." He stopped when Nate stood up. Nate was smiling as he grabbed another cigarette and then lit it. "You fell for the old left the cigarettes at home bit," Nate laughed. "I would have thought the cobwebs were gone from the people you offed recently, Jen." "Put the gun down and stand up," Heather instructed. The general tossed a pistol behind him and across the room and stood up slowly with his hands up. "People know I'm here, and in fact they may be on their way right now," the general warned. "We're aware of that, but we're pretty sure you don't want us to say anything more about the Ixnay Sassenye, right? You're playing with fire, you little turd." "Yeah, call them off or I'll use my little screen and blow your crap all the way up," Nate warned. "I'm going in my pouch for my screen to call them off. Don't shoot," the general warned. Heather nodded. Arturo went in and got his screen and typed the command to stand down on the screen and then replaced it. "Done," the general reported. "Can I sit down here?" He pointed to the old-fashioned brown couch behind him. "I've been standing up for over an hour waiting to kill you." "Yeah, sit. We have plenty to talk about," Nate said. "In fact, we don't have anything to talk about, but I'm feeling nice and patient at the moment," Arturo replied. Heather still had the gun on the general, and Nate could barely sense any fatigue from holding her arms up that long. "You want to sit or me?" Nate asked her. "I'm fine," she answered. "All right." Nate sat in the easy chair to the right of Arturo. He scratched his head. "You don't want to kill us. We're on a mission for both cities. The effing world," Nate explained. "You trash have neither the brain power nor the weapons to do anything now. We nuked you. Game over as far as the heap is concerned," Arturo said. "So you've been to Cyphus' city?" Nate asked. "What the heck are you talking about?" Arturo asked, annoyed. Nate looked over at Heather in disbelief and then back at Arturo almost in anger. "You don't know Cyphus? Ryan Cyphus?" Nate probed. Yeah, I do. I know more about him than you do, actually." "So you've been to a city?" "If you're talking about whatever's under that mountain down south, no, I haven't. I don't need—" "Then you, sir, have no friggin' idea," Nate asserted. "He's not just some nerd, okay? He's a techno-Hitler, okay?" "Hitler? Oh, that's right, the old world, Germany. Well, if that's the case, what the heck do you think you can do about it? Let me go and deal with him and settle it." "Sure thing, geezer. But you see, despite your savage attack on the heat, there are tons of survivors. We saw you coming. People took shelter. We had great halls stocked with anti-radiation medicine, nanomachines, protective suits, and on. We are still fighting to build Philly into a beacon on hope rather than blood like Fount." "Good speech, kid. But you're Fountain, whether you like—" "Don't give me that crap. That's beside the point. We're not letting you stop our mission, point blank. Arturo and Nate stared off for a moment and then broke eye contact when Nate went for another cigarette. His lungs felt sticky with tar, but he needed the calming effect. We know you killed Denali. You must understand that made the chiefs very interested in what you have planned, Nate explained. What I have planned is what I alone am privy to. I don't want nor need help. I'm not for any kumbaya bullcrap. I thank you for letting me know what you did about Cyphus. Arturo stood up and brushed the front of his jacket. I must be going now. You have 24 hours to leave or you die on Fountain soil. Excuse me, you damn fool, Heather replied. This ain't no water gun, sweetie. If you knew what was good for you, you'd have shot me 5 minutes ago. Heather and the general stared at each other for a few intense moments. Suddenly the air whooshed out of the general and he bent forward. Remember that crap? Nate said, pulling his fist from Arturo's stomach. Remember you sucker punched me before you sent me off to Philly? How does it feel, you piece of crap? Now sit down and cut the macho stuff. The general stood back up straight as he caught his breath and gave Nate an evil look before he sat back down on the couch. Nate opened his eyes wide and sat down. There's no telling if Cyphus is listening now, but F it. He's tapped into your network. He could almost literally see all of your thoughts. The AI is highly developed. Fount is going to fall into his hands unless we destroy that crap as soon as possible, Nate explained. How are you going to do it? Arturo asked. Okay, now you're starting to get why I need to work with you. There's someone in Fount that developed a large part of the AI's algorithm. Where is he or she? Not telling you. But that is only one part. Anyway, that's our mission. We'll handle that. What do you want from me? This is getting boring, the general asked. Finish what you started with Denali. Nate sat back and took a deep drag. The general smirked and shook his head and sat back into the couch. Heather lowered the gun to her hip but kept it pointed. Of course that's what you want, isn't it? Nate nodded in a cloud of smoke. Well, this is where I cash my chips to the house, Arturo said, standing up. Let me go now and we'll talk again. If you keep me here any longer, I can't tell you what I will do to you both, okay? Nate took a drag and blew out a thick cloud. He looked at Heather and nodded. Heather sighed, put on the safety, and tucked the gun into the back of her jeans. Arturo nodded at them both. My flight helmet is behind those curtains. He pointed over by the dining room. Take that as good faith. He walked out of the apartment.